Morning.
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 Morning. So thanks everyone for joining. I'm gonna wait for a few more minutes to let the rest of our participants join in. Morning, Elizabeth, and thanks for that. If you all, whoever's with us already, want to start to go ahead and introduce yourself via the chat function, please feel free to put your name, your organization, and what brought you here with us today.
Where do we start, Sarah? Hi, I'm Dennis Freeman, and I run a food pantry in Amenia Union, New York.
Thanks, Dennis, for that introduction. Okay. So, great, thank you. Again, if you want to pop in your intro into the chat box, I think that's the most effective way to ensure that everybody gets their introduction. I'm seeing that populate right now. Thank you, folks. And I'm just admitting people from our waiting room. So we're going to go ahead and get started in just a few minutes. It's just 10 o'clock now. So I want to ensure we give enough time for everyone to join us this morning. Again, welcome everyone. Just waiting a few more minutes to make sure we get all of our participants logged in. If you just joined us, if you can, put your name, your organization, and the reason that brought you here today into the chat box, that would be super helpful so we can get to know everyone that's on our call today.
Oh, no, that's not
Again, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. You can put your name, your organization, and the reason that you're here today into the chat box as an intro, and then in just a few minutes, go ahead and get started. Just admitting a few others from our waiting room. All right, folks, thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition Farm to Food Access Roundtable discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered wherever we are on stolen indigenous land. I'm in Poughkeepsie, within the traditional territory of the Lenape Nation, and I honor and I respect many diverse indigenous peoples that still continue to connect to the land on which we gather, on which we work, we profit from, and we live. My name is Sarah Salem, and I'm the Director of Development at Dutchess Outreach. We are a food access organization in Dutchess County. I am the co-founder and facilitator of the Hudson Valley Food Systems Coalition, which is a regional transdisciplinary coalition comprised of more than 100 partners working toward a more equitable and regenerative Hudson Valley food system. I want to welcome everyone. Again, if you can, pop into the chat your name, your organization, and the reason you've joined us today. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion. Again, just to remind everyone, this session is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable being recorded, you can turn your video function off. If you are comfortable, I encourage you to share your video with us today. And if you can, update your name to include your pronoun so we know how to refer you by. We've got a packed program, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions, for networking. And so for introductions, again, I'll ask that you pop your name, pop your organization, and put any other information that you'd like everyone to glean from you into the chat box. Our group accord for the Hudson Valley Food Systems Coalition is assume a positive intent, engage in dialogue, not debate, demonstrate cultural humility, hold yourself and others accountable to do the same, consider power and privilege, be open, transparent, and willing to admit mistakes, embrace the power of humble and active listening. If you agree with something that someone in your group has already said, be sure to give credit where credit is due, share space and make room for quieter voices to be heard, create trusting and a safe space, and understand that a little discomfort is okay. And so to kick us off, unfortunately, Commissioner Richard Ball of the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets couldn't join us today. However, he has sent us a quick video message to get our discussion off and running. Commissioner Ball has served as the Commissioner of Agriculture for the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets since 2014. He began his career in agriculture at the age of 18, working on a vegetable farm in Rhode Island. And for the last 25 years, he has been the proud owner and operator of the Schoharie Valley Farm in Schoharie, New York. Richard has held a number of positions within agriculture and community organizations at the local, state, and national level, including the New York State Vegetable Growers Association, the New York Farm Bureau, and the American Farm Bureau, and the Schoharie County Chamber of Commerce. He currently serves as second vice president on the National Association of State Department of Agriculture Board of Directors and on the association's Food Regulation Steering Committee. He is also the president of Food Export Northeast. And so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen so that we can see this video message.
Good morning. I'm New York State Agricultural Commissioner Richard Ball, and I'm honored to help you kick off your roundtable discussion today. As we all know, connecting the dots between our farmers and our families in need is more urgent now than ever before, and it's so important that we continue this conversation. Our department has long been focused on issues of food insecurity and hunger, with our Council on Hunger and Food Policy working hard over the past several years just to improve access to healthy, locally grown food for New York State residents, and to increase cooperation between the folks who produce and supply food and the organizations addressing hunger. Very proud of what we've accomplished so far and the relationships that we've built. It's these partnerships that have been the foundation of the successful Nourish New York program. Nourish New York is connecting people facing food insecurity our emergency food providers, and our farmers like never before. The program has provided $60 million in funding to help food banks purchase to date more than 21 million pounds of surplus food from New York producers and deliver it to more than 1.3 million households all across the state. It's a win-win-win for everyone. Nourish New York came together with incredible speed during the early days of the crisis last spring, and it has been a lifeline for both our farmers and our families during the pandemic. If there is a silver lining to be found in the challenges of this past year, I think it's an increased focus on where our food comes from and how it gets to us. Those of us who work within the food system have a great opportunity ahead of us to continue to grow that interest and help people connect with their local farmers and shop for local foods. I thank you all for your hard work to move these important issues forward, and I look forward to hearing more from your conversations today. Thanks for what you do.
Great. Thank you, Richard, from wherever you are today. Again, unfortunately, you couldn't join us, and we're very appreciative that he was able to send that video message to us. So now I'd like to pass to my colleague on the Food System Coalition, Marianne Johnson, who is the Deputy Director at the Hudson Valley Agribusiness Development Corporation, who would like to frame where this discussion and the idea for this discussion came from. Marianne?
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are very excited to see the number of participants here today. We feel like we've really hit on a core issue of bringing fresh and nutritious food to our food banks and our food pantries here in the Hudson Valley. As Sarah mentioned, I am the facilitator of the Land and Agriculture Interest Group for the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition. The interest group are sort of the core working groups for the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition. And we have 5 in total. In addition to land and ag, we have processing, aggregation, and distribution, food access, resource and waste, and core values. Each of these groups have been meeting separately, and you are all free to check them out on our website, which Sarah, I think, will post somewhere for us at some point. And you are welcome to join in and participate in any way that you feel is meaningful, and we would welcome that. The Land and Agriculture Group held a meeting in January, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due, according to our cord, as Sarah said. And one of our farmers who is participating, who is also here today, Mark Doyle, brought up the concept of having our farms work directly with our pantries and our other food security agencies. And we know there's a number of ways that food gets to these places. Farmers often do donations. We know that the food bank works with farmers, but we wanted to have a discussion about how could we do something perhaps more direct from the farm right to the food access agency. I think our group thought it was a great idea. We really hustled to put this program together, knowing that the farmers are hitting their growing season very quickly. And we reached out to the food access group, which is facilitated by my colleague, Sarah Salem. And we agreed that we would do this, I think, incredibly valuable forum today. So again, we're really happy that you are all here. We look forward to hearing about the programs that have happened, stemming from COVID, and we'd like to figure out how we can continue this good work that's being done. Sarah, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Great, thank you, Marianne. And as Marianne stated, as the number of Americans experiencing food insecurity continues to rise, and more Americans are left with no choice but to seek out assistance from food access organizations and projects. These projects were first initiated as a temporary measure to fill a gap during past economic downturns, and have not been able to, as is stated in most of the industry, put themselves out of business, which points to the larger issue that exists within our communities. That is, income inequality and unequal access to opportunity, which then amplifies the need for these programs to pivot and ensure that we're not just providing food, calories, we're providing real, nutritious, healthy, locally grown foods to folks that need them the most. A need that has become even more pressing through the global pandemic that is the coronavirus. As health disparities are exacerbated through low-income communities of Black and Brown folks among large marginalized populations, which then presents the necessity and the urgency for our work together to forge and strengthen relationships between farmers and food access organizations or projects in a mutually beneficial way as a public health intervention. And so the discussion that we're having today, there are a number of programs that have popped up and that have existed for years. And we want to hear about their successes. We want to hear about what challenges they face. And we want to hear about their future growth potential. And so we've called together a number of folks that have been working on this through the pandemic and previously to engage in our roundtable discussion. And again, with the opportunity to hear from everyone on the call through a question and answer period and a networking period at the end of the program. And just so everyone knows, when we hit the end of the program, we'll have an opportunity for farmers to connect with food access organizations or for folks that think they can help to support the effort to connect with each other. Or if you're done with the conversation and you're just in listen mode, the opportunity for you all to say goodbye and to think about this throughout your day, which we hope you do. So to start us off, I am going to ask folks from the Nourish New York program. We have Linda La Violette, the Special Assistant to the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, Mary Ulrich from Agricultural, who is an agricultural program leader at Cornell Cooperative Extension, Orange County, and Liana Booth, who's the Food Industry Relations and Food Drive Coordinator from the Hudson Valley Food Bank, to unmute themselves and introduce themselves better than I could have done so. So Linda, there's a huge screen of faces. I can't see you, but I trust that you've unmuted yourself and that you can start the introductions from the Nourish New York initiative.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me to join you here today. I want to call out my good friends, Marianne and Todd at Hudson Valley Agribusiness, who I've worked with for many years. I also think that my colleague, Kim Viejo, is on the call as well. And we were planning to tag team the Nourish New York program. Basically, I work for a great commissioner. Commissioner Ball is the real deal. He's a farmer. He set up a very successful business doing direct sales to consumers as well as selling into the institutional market. But let me talk a little bit about the Nourish New York initiative. The program started in 2020. It was conceived as a lifeline for families and farmers who have been struggling with changes brought on by COVID-19. This program helps people who are food insecure by providing a market for farmers to sell their product. A total of $60 million has been dedicated through the program so far, and the funds allow for New York emergency food providers to purchase surplus products from New York farmers, dairy manufacturers, and other processors and deliver it to food banks. As of December, Nourish has resulted in the purchase of more than 17 million pounds of food and served more than 1 million households in New York. This last round of Nourish funding is providing 35 million in funds. And most of these funds are distributed to the 10 regional food banks and to other sub-awardees who participate in the HIPNAP program. And that was a really important way to get the program up and running very quickly because those sub-awardees had previous contracts with through the HIPNAP program, so we can channel the money to them. Nourish is an important revenue stream for farmers, and it's also helping to get wholesome, healthy food to those in need. Jessica Brooks at the Department of Agriculture is responsible for vetting farmers and New York producers that would like to get their program into the, get their products into the Nourish New York program. So if you have a product or you have an item that you'd like to see get out there, you should contact her at the department. We're vetting all items that are purchased through the Nourish New York program. I know that the time is limited, so I just want to touch on a few other points. Through Nourish New York, we've been able to establish some very interesting pilot projects working with our New York State veterans. Veterans have a food insecurity rate of twice normal people, which is really terrible. And we've set up 3 programs, one in Buffalo, one in the Bronx, and another in the North Country. And we're working on others where we work with the New York State Veterans Affairs, local veterans group, and the food banks to develop food boxes or regular deliveries to veterans that are either homebound or food insecure. And so this is a pilot that we've vetted, and it's been very successful. And we're trying to get a pilot like this in each of the regional food bank areas. So if you work with the veterans group that would be interested, we'd love to hear about it. With that, I'll hold until you have any questions.
Sure. And Linda, I see a question in the chat asking if you could share your colleague's email with the group.
Sure, I'll put it in the chat.
Great, thank you. And let me see. I see another question from Martha Elder who are asking, are there minimums for farmers to participate in Nourish New York, or can a small scale farm participate?
Well, I don't think there are minimums, but you know, part of the, so what happens is we have, Jessica assembles the list of approved products. That list then goes out to food banks or sub-awardees, and they order off that list. But some of the factors that determine whether or not they're going to order are delivery, or do they have the capacity to deliver? Are they delivering to the food bank, and is the food bank delivering, or are they delivering directly to the pantry? And so it's a little complicated, but not too complicated. For example, with the YMCA of Yonkers, what we arranged is to have you know, an aggregator, Grow NYC in this case, put together a sort of a food box from several different farmers and delivered it to the YMCA so that they can distribute to their members. Some food banks are just buying you know, product directly from a farmer. Say they're buying yogurt, or they're buying you know, squash, onions. They then aggregate it at their hub, and then they do the breakdown and send it to the food pantry. I mean, you know, one of the serious problems that we've noticed is infrastructure and logistics, and that's a crucial problem in non-COVID times, and it's been more crucial during COVID. So, I mean, does the food pantry have adequate refrigeration to store the product? If not, they have to accept it the same day and get it out the same day, especially if it's perishable products like you know, cold dairy sausages or dairy or dairy. If it's onions and carrots and squash, I mean, it'll hold longer. So I mean, I don't have to preach to this group, because I'm sure you're all familiar with the challenges, but all things considered, this program has been really, I think, very successful.
Okay, great. Thank you, Linda. And I want to give an opportunity for Mary Ulrich, who I see, to report out from their perspective at CCE Orange. And for folks putting questions into the chat box, thank you. we're going to get to those questions that are specifically relevant to Nourish after every person from the program has an opportunity to share. So again, thank you. And thank you, Linda, for that. Mary?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Mary Ulrich with Cornell Cooperative Extension in Orange County. I'm the agriculture program leader, but I'm also on the Eastern New York commercial horticulture team. So I do have a wider, especially for produce, wider group that I work with, not just Orange County. And so just a little background, we're a HIPNAP contractor, but we never bought food before because we contract for our gleaning program. It pays for staff and vehicles to pick up extras at farms, farmers markets, you name it, and distribute it to soup kitchens and food pantries. We have been part of that transportation cold storage gap because we have a refrigerated truck. So before us, a lot of pantries couldn't get fresh product because we are their refrigeration now. We're delivering it on the day they need it. And so I want to echo that. And so, of course, my history has been working with produce farmers, dairy farmers for many, many, many years now. And so trying to figure out how to get deliveries directly to pantries on the day they need them, especially for the highly perishable products, like was mentioned, meat and dairy, is a big lift. You know, when you just want 80 half gallons of milk delivered because this tiny pantry is only doing 40 families once a month. For the dairy farmer to go out of their way or to figure out a volunteer to go and get it and pick it up and deliver it that morning, it's like an extra step. So the one thing I want to call out is sort of a golden that I've noticed. We've worked with Touch and Community of Rockland for a long time now, and their agencies all get together and share refrigeration, freezer space, and shelf stable storage. And so that has, as a Nourish buyer, that has worked out like a charm for me. And then I can have fairly large deliveries dropped off to them, and then they worry about the little teeny tiny distributions, or their agencies are coming to one location. So if there's one thing that I think would make a big difference, is if every county had one of these hubs where there might be a hired employee that worried about the in and the out and what agency's coming and who's dropping off, so that we could maintain that should this become a real thing, because the distribution, the small scale distribution, doesn't work in the system. I had farmers tell me, I don't have enough drivers for that. I don't have enough trucks for that. I can't do that kind of distribution. It's not part of our regular thing. So I think because the system, COVID showed that the system runs on a dime. Our food system runs on a dime. And it kind of broke a little bit when things came to a screeching halt, couldn't run on a dime anymore. And so the efficiency of the big drop-offs, now we need these little ones. And so where are we going to find the efficiencies in that? Because it still needs to be an efficient system. Especially if tax dollars are involved, it should still be efficient. I mean, help everybody all along the way. And so figuring out how to do those little deliveries, little drop-offs. I know myself as a Nourish buyer, I did not buy tractor trailer loads of cheese because I don't have a place to put it. So I worked directly with the farmers for them either to do the distribution or for it to end up on our Glean Mobile. And then we did the distribution from there, or some split between those two, which again, like when I bought meat and beans in really large quantities, half of it went to Rockland County, the other half went on our truck, and then our truck spread it out to the littler places. So trying to figure this out and agree, there may be a box program in our future, somewhere between the CSA share and the federal food box program, which I don't think was terribly helpful, at least here in New York. Somewhere in there would be great. And Linda, I want to talk to you later about the veterans thing because I have some ideas. But I managed to buy also 100% New York State. We did have a little leeway in Nourish to buy up to 15% from other places. but because I was working directly with farmers and not with the Sorrentos or the Chobanis of the world, even though they're all New York and they were on the list, I could pick and choose a little better.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Linda, I see that you put your hand up, and I want to encourage among program participants, the panel to kind of be free flowing. But Linda, if you had something to say, and then Liana, you're on deck for describing the food bank's relationship to Nourish New York.
Well, I just wanted to agree with what Marie said. I mean, it's really a serious problem before and much worse now. And we saw it with the USDA food boxes. They refused to deliver to small pantries that had a need because they didn't have the infrastructure to accept it. So that's all I was saying. Marie, you hit the nail on the head, and I'll talk to you later.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Liana?
Hi, I'm Leanna. I'm the Food Industry Relations and Food Drive Coordinator at the Food Bank of the Hudson Valley over in Cornwall, New York. I'm fairly new to the food bank still, so bear with me on my facts and everything. But our director, Joanne Dwyer, she handles the Nourish New York purchasing and everything, and she's in our regional food bank up in Latham, New York. So I'll put her information in the chat after I'm done speaking if anyone has any more questions for her, or if there's any growers or producers that have any qualifying Nourish New York products they might want to see if they're available for purchasing. But so the food bank has been using funds from the Nourish New York from the state, and we work with New York State growers and producers to purchase products for distribution. It's an abundance of fresh local food to help people in need while also benefiting the state's agricultural community. So we've been purchasing a lot of dairy products and fresh produce. And I think in this third round, we're actually going to purchase some fish products too. So that'll be good. But like you said, with COVID, bunch of restaurants and food suppliers, they've been closing, and it's leaving a lot of growers and producers with leftover surplus just overnight, just building up. So we were able to use Nourish New York funds to purchase the surplus and the produce and just allow it to not go to waste, because that is our big mission, is to prevent food waste and alleviate hunger. So we're able to help out the produce, the growers and farmers, and purchase their surpluses so it doesn't go to waste. And so we're able to distribute it to families and people in need. I think for the Food Bank of the Hudson Valley, we serve 6 counties, Dutchess, Orange, Ulster, Rockland, Sullivan, and Putnam. And just in those 6 counties, since February 16th, we distributed 1.8 million pounds of Nourish New York products, which is equivalent to more than 1.5 million meals. So we got that to distribute to a bunch of families in need and agencies. And then just in conjunction with the regional food bank, we serve 23 counties in New York, and that was about 5.2 million pounds of food that we were able to distribute from the Nourish New York program, which translates to about 4.3 million meals throughout the county. So it's definitely been huge help and very productive program. And I know we're very grateful for it. I think that's all I have for now.
Great.
But like I said, I'll put Joanne Dwyer's contact information in. If anyone has any questions, they can contact her for any more Nourish New York info.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Liana. And thank you, folks from Nourish New York. And I want to offer the opportunity for folks who have questions pertaining specifically to the Nourish Initiative to pop them in the chat, or to use the raise hand function so we can see your hand raised if you want to pose your question yourself.
So I'm actually entering my email address in the chat box, because I've gotten a few private messages, and I'm awful at managing the chat box. People might. And I also want to shout out to Stiles Najak. She's on here. She's our food security coordinator, which more of you probably deal with on a daily basis. I just happen to be the one that on Nourish did the, organizing because she's busy going to pick up all the free stuff and deliver the stuff that I bought. So she's on here and she's very much part of this group way more than I am. So she probably can answer questions even better than I can on some of this stuff.
Great. Yeah, and I would second the shout to Stiles, who is a co-facilitator of the Hudson Valley Food Systems Coalition. So Stiles, feel free to jump in if you have anything else to impart. And if there are no questions currently, again, we'll have.
Sarah, there's one question in the box. The question
Sure.
is, do farms need a minimum on liability insurance or GAP certification / food safety inspections for the Nourish New York program?
Well, we didn't get, as far as I know, we didn't get there. Now, on a professional level, because we teach food safety and encourage GAP certification, and of course, FSMA's the law for most, depending on how small is. I highly recommend it. I think agencies should ask for it because the clientele that they're feeding do tend to be a higher risk population for autoimmune issues and others. They tend to be younger, they tend to be older and just sicker than the average population. So we should be trying to get that stuff when we can. But right now, no one is being required, at least I'm not requiring. But I also haven't dealt with any farms, any really teeny tiny farms that don't have at least $1 million policy that I know of.
I'm not 100% sure, but I would think that you would have to meet, the minimum standards. And and certainly the food banks each have their own standards. And, so I think that if you have a product, you have a farm, you go through Jessica, because you can't sell your product into the Nourish New York program without her approving it. So she would work with the farm. I mean, there are some exemptions, for example, with farms selling within a certain radius around their farm to like farmers markets. I mean, they have different requirements, but even farmers markets have $1 million liability policy. So I don't know if that answers. But.
Hey, Linda, it's Mary Ann. Thank you. I have a question regarding, folks have been mentioning a qualifying product. Can anyone, you or Mary, describe what that is?
So this program is really not designed to take, products. Like we really did fight to get, spaghetti pasta in and bread. I mean, initially, the focus of Nourish New York was, the whole commodity, right? The corn, the dairy products. Dairy products were a big focus. We have, though, accepted products like hot dogs and sausages made from cull dairy. But basically, the product has to be at least 85% made from New York products. So, I mean, there is really more of a focus on the commodity aspect of it rather than the processed product aspect. Not to say they can't get in, but does that answer your question, Marian?
Yes, I think so. Thank you for clarifying what that meant.
Can I also just add one thing about the fish, because Liana said she would buy it? That was a major success for us because, the fisheries on Long Island are in major decline right now. They're really hurting. But Peter Haskell from Haskell Foods Haskell Seafood was able to package his fish into 5-pound packages. And so frozen fish and fresh fish is now available. And that's been a lifeline to a lot of fishermen out there.
Great. Thank you so much, Linda. And I want to offer space and check to see if there are any farmers who were involved in Nourish New York that are on the call today that had their foods in the program. So I'm going to do a scan, or feel free to just chime in if you're with us. Okay. I don't see any. Great. And you know, as a food access organization, I can say Duchess Outreach has benefited greatly from the Nourish New York initiative, and has restored some of that dignity to our clients who come to visit the pantry, knowing that they're getting local New York State grown produce when they come to pick up their pantry packages. So Linda, I thank you for that. And Mary, especially you, I thank you for that, and Styles as well, and Liana as well. Our relationship with the food bank is uber important in that. And with that, again, we'll have opportunities for more questions toward the end of the program and the panel. Oh, I see that Hawthorne Valley Farm. Lauren, did you want to chime in and kind of describe your experience from Hawthorne Valley?
It was really positive. I believe it was our dairy products, and it was actually Zach Tattersall Hill who arranged that. And we're a big place, so I don't know many more details for that. I believe our contract ended. I'm not sure if it's continuing, but it was great for us to get our products out locally for sure.
Excellent.
Lauren, do you want to just mention a little bit about Hawthorne Valley while we have you on? Talk about it a bit.
Sure. We are a diverse nonprofit in Columbia County, which includes a diversified organic biodynamic farm where we have a creamery on site. So we do the vegetables, we do dairy, we do grains, we have an on-site bakery and store. We also have a program called Rolling Grocer 19, which does food access in Columbia County, and is established in Hudson with a brick and mortar store with a tiered pricing model where people self-select in where they feel it is appropriate for them to be in terms of paying wholesale price or full retail or something in between. And we also have a site up in New Lebanon, but in expanding it to the county, which is something we're very interested to do, has gotten stymied with the pandemic. So we're hoping to pick that up and find more partnership opportunities there.
Thank you, Lauren.
Great. Thank you so much. And with that, again, there'll be more opportunity to ask questions about Nourish New York toward the end of the program. We're going to move on to hearing from Megan Larmer, who is the Senior Director of Regional Food Systems at Glynwood Center for Regional Food and Farming, who will talk about their program called the Food Sovereignty Fund, which is addressing this issue from a different perspective. Megan?
Sure. Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for having us as part of this conversation today. And thanks to everyone for being here. I want to start also just by giving a lot of gratitude for that Nourish New York presentation and the incredible work that's been done for the farms in the state and the various food access work. So I'm going to describe a project that I think complements Nourish New York really nicely, and go into a little bit of the history of how it evolved and where we're at now. So I'm talking about a new project for Glynwood. It's called the Food Sovereignty Fund. I think most folks on this call, I recognize a lot of you are probably familiar with Glynwood. For those who aren't, I'm going to do the quick tinned introduction. We're an agricultural nonprofit based in Putnam County in Cold Spring. And we undertake a variety of activities to build a regional food system that is closely tied to regenerative agriculture, that is equitable and resilient. We train farmers on our working farm. We have a farm business incubator. And then the work I do is largely in coalition building across the region. So looking at different sectors in the food and farming system, hearing from our stakeholders what they need and want to build the food system we hope for, and figuring out how to do that together. So the Food Sovereignty Fund really came out of one of those coalitions. For 4 years now, we've facilitated a coalition of CSA farmers in the region. This work initially began with a primary focus of increasing CSA membership across the Hudson Valley. So we were able to launch this coalition with support from the USDA. And I'm going to try to skip over my script about the Hudson Valley CSA Coalition so I can get us to the present as quickly as possible. But suffice to say that conversations with those CSA farmers, what came up over and over and over again in our annual meetings was a desire to better serve all of the people that were living in their communities and not just the people who were able to afford the CSA shares that they were offering. So this question of how small-scale community-based farms can be part of food access is one, that well predates this pandemic. So through those conversations, we developed a pilot project called CSA as a SNAP. That project is looking to make CSA membership more accessible to SNAP EBT beneficiaries through a revolving loan fund. Piloted it last season, continuing that pilot this season. Happy to talk more with folks who are interested in that specifically. The purpose of bringing that up to be that one of the key farms in that pilot, Rocksteady Farm and Flour, has long worked in food access. And at the beginning of the pandemic in March, brought together various farmers and food access workers and others who've been getting in touch with them to say, how do we rise to this mounting challenge as these small scale farms with these very tight margins, but with a deep commitment to serving our community, right? So I was grateful to join in those conversations, and many of the folks on this call were part of those as well. And in those early months, what became really clear was that an intervention was needed that would allow farms who are working on such tight margins to be able to provide food for food access. So similar inspiration to what prompted the Nourish New York program, we needed to be paying farms to be able to do this. That the ways in which food aid has been offered domestically and even internationally in the US has largely relied on the excess and the waste of a food system that we know is not functioning to serve all of us. So what is an alternative intervention that we can think of? So that was our inspiration at Glynwood to start bringing together people to answer this question for these farms that are least likely to be able to access the many wonderful innovations that were happening at a federal and a state level, right? So to really think about serving farms that are led by BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, people from the LGBTQ plus community, and female identifying farmers. So to that end, we assembled an accountability council to help develop the program. And if it's all right, I'm gonna share some slides just to make sure that I stay on track in telling you about that program. So let me do that really quickly. Okay, great. Okay, can you see that all right? Yep. So here's, thank you. So here's the basic model of how the Food Sovereignty Fund works. And yeah, forgive me for this being not the slickest presentation. As long as you can see it, I think we're all right. So we piloted this in 2020, again, just with the sort of like back of the envelope, let's see what we can make happen through generous support from the community foundations of the Hudson Valley. We were able to do a rough and ready version of contracting these small scale farms to provide food to community-led food access work, whether that be a formalized pantry or a more ad hoc mutual aid network. And now in 2021, we are at a point where we've been able to create a process that is a bit more routinized, a bit more transparent. So farmers apply, our Accountability Council reviews those requests. We're in the midst of that right now. Then as we get into the end of this winter, early spring, we'll be able to award contracts to farmers, match them with food access projects, and provide technical assistance to those partners. I think an important piece of this project that I want to emphasize is that the amount of that contract and the type of food detailed in those contracts will be agreed upon between both the food access project and the farmer. And this is why we're referring to this as a food sovereignty fund specifically, because that decision-making, that community control over the food system is a key part of how we envision this moving forward. And then, right, people will receive that delicious food. People in their community will receive that delicious food. So the goals of this project, as I touched on briefly, to advance food sovereignty, that community-led control and decision-making over our own food system, to ensure that everyone in the Hudson Valley has access to this locally produced farm fresh food that we're so well known for, to compensate farmers, right? And so one of the challenges we know is coming up for us is like price setting, figuring out exactly how we say this is the right price for broccoli in this case, right? We want to make sure farmers are being paid competitively. We know that a variance in growing practices, farm scale, market can all really change what that means. So definitely would love insight from other folks who maybe have gone through that process. And then, our really ambitious, like long-term goal is to really transform the way we think about our food system and how we feed folks in the Hudson Valley, to integrate the efforts of all of the good people on this call and elsewhere. We see a possibility to address work across the region in partnership with the Food System Coalition, with all the different organizations represented, to really build these networks so they better communicate with each other. So here's a quick overview of how the project's gone and where it's going. So in 2020, our proof of concept, we recruited our accountability council, who has both helped to design the program, is now helping to review applications, and will help to deliver technical assistance with the addition of other experts from across the region. They are compensated for their time on this project, which I think is important. We're really looking to build equity into like every step of the project as we go. In 2020, we were able to work with 10 farms, 14 different outlets for the food from those farms, and to provide 7,000 pounds of food through that project. So just a beginning, but we think it's a disruptive enough concept that the idea is big if the impact is still on its way to as big as it could be. We're in the midst, as I said, of this application process. We've been really gratified by interest in it. We've had over 37 farms apply. We believe we can support 10 to 15 farms this year. It's a tricky balance of figuring out how to make sure that we're really carefully holding those relationships between the farm and the food access projects and supporting both sides as much as they need. In 2022 and beyond, we hope to expand and build this fund. When folks ask like, how ambitious could you get with it? There's really no end to the need, both from the farmer side and from the community side. So we see a lot of potential to build a community of practice wherein the people who are participating in this fund more and more are teaching each other, supporting each other, and creating this resilient network that we know goes far beyond just resources and starts to really create the kind of community that allows food sovereignty to be a possibility. So I think I'm gonna stop there, stop sharing my screen, and yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan, for presenting that. And again, another way to solve the issue that has been presented to us right up in front of our faces through the coronavirus pandemic. So I want to give an opportunity for folks to pose questions at this point for Megan, understanding that, again, we will have another opportunity at the end of the entire discussion. So feel free to either pop that into the chat or use the raise your hand function. And I'm going to scan the screen. I don't see any in the chat for this specific program at this moment.
May I ask a question, Megan?
Yeah, please. Yeah, definitely.
So can you talk about that contract with the grower? I know it's between the grower and the agency, but I'm assuming it's sort of contract growing. They're going to agree to an amount and a dollar. When will the grower be paid? God forbid there's crop failure. Are there any contingencies for things like that?
That's great. Thank you, Marianne. Thanks so much for asking that. So the contract will be actually structured between Glynwood and the grower. And the purpose of this is not to reduce the agency of the food access projects, but to take some of the paperwork burden off of them. We hope that will be effective. And the contract will be paid in full at the start of this, prior to the growing season. So the farmer will receive the funds similar to like a CSA model. Then with required reporting and check-in, we have the idea that for small changes in produce fulfillment, right? So let's say like a couple rows of lettuce just pooped out, they didn't happen. And so you don't deliver that week, but maybe you deliver the next week, or maybe you deliver pea shoots instead of lettuces. Fine, that can be coordinated between the pantry or the outlet and the farmer themselves. For larger changes, let's say there's like catastrophic weather, your entire greenhouse is wiped out at the start of the season, we would have a renegotiation of the contract at that point.
Great.
And yeah.
So I see, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
A number of other questions have just come through. One from Martha Elder. Is it too late for farms to participate in 2021 for the Food Sovereignty Fund?
Thanks for asking that, Martha. So our priority deadline for application was the end of December. So farms that were able to apply more or less around then are currently under review. We have had significantly more interest than we're able to meet. So as I said, we had 37 farms apply. We have in the fund right now, $50,000 we're able to contract out. Were we to meet the request for the farms that have requested so far, that would be over $500,000 in contracts. So we're in the midst of fundraising for this campaign. We know that we'll be able to award some before this growing season starts. We are keeping that application open. So if we're more successful in our fundraising than we, well, not than we expect, but if we're extremely successful in our fundraising, then we hope to be able to welcome new participants into the project. So if you know a farm who would like to participate, I encourage them to fill out the interest form. It's really brief. It should take like less than 10 minutes. And then we'll have that farm's information on file to get in touch with them if and when we're able to welcome new partners for this year. The other big concern, just to name it, aside from funding, is like the technical assistance and community holding support is one of the major barriers to small farms participating in addition to funding. So right, like cold storage is a huge challenge, but then just figuring out that agreement with your community partner, that's one of the major benefits we think we can offer to these farms to help structure a well agreed upon, well understood agreement, and to have a third party that can help to figure things out when they inevitably get kinked up in the actual doing.
Great. And I see another question from Aura Wise. What's the funding strategy and how are you sustaining this commitment?
Great, thank you, Aura. So last year, as I mentioned, we were able to do the first trial run of this project thanks to the generous support of the community foundations of the Hudson Valley and their rapid response granting for COVID-19. We have, for this pilot, been lucky to secure commitments from some foundations and have seen generous response from individual and private donors through a fundraising campaign. Our ambition is to look for federal dollars that will support the continued development of this campaign. So as many of the people on this call know, we're in the midst of federal grant season. So we're checking into what could work to support this. And then, I like to think really ambitiously, and I think 10, 15 years from now, I see such interest in this work nationally. We've had a lot of conversations with various partners, both at the state level and nationally, that I think there's strong argument for work like this to rise to the level of what we've seen around school feeding, institutional purchasing, and really start securing steady federal dollars for projects like this one and projects like this. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Megan. I see another question from Lauren Kaplan. How is product getting to pantries? Is it direct from farm to pantry?
Yeah, it's pretty much direct from farm to pantry. That's some of the, a lot of the logistics questions we're going to be figuring out this year. So we're hoping to be able to expand in future years when we have a few more, when we have a season under our belt with some more nitty-gritty experience. Yeah.
Great. And I'd just like to add, as a member of the Accountability Council and a receiving organization, that, what Megan is stating as far as codifying these kinds of programs, I see as the utmost necessity in order to kind of release the stigma attached to going for food assistance and to ensure that food access organizations also are able to support themselves and to have the capacity to accept the food, as Linda and Mary pointed out, through their Nourish New York programs, and understanding that the capacity is not always there. So the funding stream needs to kind of tackle both sides of the equation for this program to be successful in the long run. So thanks for that question. I see another from Luke Ipiolita. Sorry, I'm horrible with last names. I really apologize for that. Is any Nourish New York funding eligible to go into the Food Sovereignty Fund? So that question Linda, I don't know if you can address that.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I don't think that we would be, we are not supporting the CSA model with the Nourish New York funding at this time. But it doesn't mean that that couldn't change. I think that some of what we would look at it would be the cost. Is there any cost to the recipient? And what would be the average cost per CSA box or bag? You know, we're looking right now, we're comparing the cost from the USD food boxes to costs that food banks or, you know, what the food banks costs are for putting together boxes. So, I mean, it would, you know, it has to be somewhere in that range. So obviously we want to make sure most of the money goes to farmers and that people get the biggest bang for the buck. So I think that would be important. But I like the model. I think we tried, Kim Viejo and I tried to include CSAs in the Nourish program. We were just, it wasn't accepted. Did that answer your question?
It could have. Megan, did you want to offer any reply to that?
Yeah, so yes, so to the first question, and it's my fault for having confused the two. This program isn't exclusively for CSA. We do have an exclusive CSA project that works on CSA and SNAP dollars, which is aside from this project that inspired this Food Sovereignty Fund project. So the farmers don't have to be CSA farmers, nor do they have to produce like CSA boxes for the food access outlets. The requirements are that they be under a certain revenue amount in certain counties, and we're giving high priority to farms from historically marginalized demographics or communities, and are excited that this first cohort will entirely be farms led by people from those demographics. So that's just one quick clarification. And there is no cost to the recipient. And as Sarah was pointing out, part of the ambition for this project is to, you know, hold both sides of this equation. So right now, Glynwood's network and expertise and what we're able to hold is definitely like in the farming end of the community. And we're building, hopefully through this and other efforts, are building relationships with the food access community more strongly so that we can provide the much needed support that end of the equation needs as well, including professional development, infrastructure growth, because right, like it's all well and good if a farm can produce a pile of tomatoes for an outlet, but if there's challenges on the other end in distributing those to the people who want to eat them, then we run into problems of waste and all of that. So we'd like to be able to provide that technical assistance and support to both ends of it in future iterations. Yeah.
So, I mean, right now, the money goes to, most of the money goes to your local food bank. You could work with your local food bank to see if they would provide some funding directly to the farmers for that. I think this sounds like, you know, what we want to achieve. The other, I mean, hopefully this program will continue. You would probably need to try to become, if you wanted to get a sub award yourself, you would probably need to apply to become a HIPNAP program, because those are the only sub awardees that are getting money besides the food banks. I don't make the decision, but I mean, that's, I think, the process.
Mary, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to throw out, because I think it's, you know, I get tangled in the language sometimes too. So we say CSA, but CSA in its spirit is that a customer pays upfront entirely, and that if there is a loss of one crop or many, the customer takes that on because they've bought a share in that farm. So they're sharing in the pluses and the minuses. And when we're using tax dollars, we can't do that. So we need to find another word of pre-purchase, or, you know, something that isn't CSA, because I know we get tangled on that spirit of the CSA, and that it's something about pre-purchasing mixed boxes. And we want to find a better word than that. And we all need to find a better word, I think, because this pre-purchase of a mixed box of product that is seasonally available and competitively priced is what we want, but that's too many words. So I think if we find the model that fits that, because a lot of farmers say they're doing CSAs, they don't do CSAs. They, you know, because if the customer, if they have a complete loss, like happened with Irene and Lee, many farmers still provided food. They bought it from their neighbors, or they still had something to give away. Like very few customers actually went without. So we want to find a better way of describing what we're talking about, because I think, you know, when even funder dollars, tax dollars are used, and we're talking about the hungry, they still need to get food.
Yeah. Linda, your hand.
So, yeah, I think, thank you, Marie, for clearing that up. I was confused about it. I thought it was the CSA model, and I think that's a good suggestion, maybe trying to really clear that up. Actually, we worked with exactly your model with the Yonkers YMCA. They got an award, right, from Nourish New York for the first 2 rounds. And they couldn't, they didn't have the capacity to reach out to 10 different farmers to get each item. And so they worked with Grow NYC's Green Market Co. that aggregated and arranged for these products to be aggregated and brought in. And essentially that's what Glynwood is doing. But of course you're paying for it now too. But there would be no reason why you wouldn't be able to work with you know, someone that has received the money or the food bank to deliver those products, even if you're not doing the logistics yourself, but to get those products to the food pantry. There are a lot of ways forward, and I think that we're going to see a lot more pilots. I love the idea of running pilots like this, because you do see what works and what doesn't.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Linda, for that. So Megan, I see a few more questions in the chat box, which I want to get to now, and then we're going to jump to our next presenter so we can keep the program moving. But quickly, if you can, someone is asking if you're able to give more details on the vetting process for farms that wish to participate in the program.
Sure. So I'll take this opportunity again just to offer huge gratitude to our Accountability Council, and to encourage anyone who's thinking of starting a program to get yourself a community of thinkers to work with around it, because they've really been integral in shaping what that application and vetting process is like. So we have a very short interest form where we try to assess, like, do you meet the criteria we've laid out as who we want to be eligible for this? And just hearkening back a little bit to what Linda and Mary have said, like, we need lots of different programs. We have a really, really wonderfully diverse farming system in New York. And so it's exciting to me to see the ways in which we are like answering all those varied needs in a coordinated way, but also in these distinct ways. So to figure out, like, how do we find out if the farm that's applying meets this section of farms we want to work? And we made it as short as possible. It's in English and Spanish. The hope is that you can more or less do it on your phone. We are going to make some tweaks to it in the future. And then based on that interest form, the farm, if they meet those criteria, are followed up with an in-person interview, well, in person, over Zoom or over the phone, so that they can have a chance to express more holistically what their farm's goals and needs are. We are admittedly using this year's application process as a way to start to define more clearly what our criteria for participation are. As we're seeing who's interested, we're able to better understand who we can best serve. So it's really like this reciprocal process. So that's a really fuzzy way of saying what we're looking for is, you know, farms that are motivated to do this work, farms that lack the resources, be those financial resources, and also like fluency with with government programs or administrative ability to handle those, or language skills to interact with those, and who have the capacity to move into a community of practice sort of mentorship model. So farms that clearly have been leading some community engaged work, but maybe need support in getting into this food access space. So those aren't hard and fast criteria, but that's how we're walking through it. What it looks like right now is like a lot of really long conversations that are really fun and yeah, time consuming in all the best ways. I hope that's a helpful window into the process, and we'll get clearer as season on season. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Megan. And again, for folks who have more questions for Megan and on the Food Sovereignty Fund or Nourish New York, there'll be an opportunity following the rest of the discussion. Next, we'd like to hear from Steve Rosenberg, who is the Senior Vice President for Scenic Hudson, and who initiated a donation to encourage donations of dairy product generated in New York State here in the Hudson Valley to food access organizations. And Steve, I invite you to introduce yourself better than I could ever, and to describe the partnership that you helped to create through the coronavirus pandemic.
Thanks, Sarah, and also to Marianne, who's been a great partner in this. And I apologize, I'm just joining the meeting now because of another commitment I had earlier, but it's great to see everyone and be part of the conversation. I want to give just a little bit of background on how Scenic Hudson sort of got to this space, and I think what my hope is that what we've done this past year might inspire others to do the same, or to find ways to enhance and increase the capacity for these kinds of programs. Scenic Hudson's been working on initiatives to strengthen the regional food system for many years, initially and primarily working with farmers to conserve their farms. And that directs substantial capital to farmers, which they then typically reinvest in modernization or enhancing their financial and environmental sustainability. So it really does help to support the regional food system. And as part of that work, it also evolved, and I know some of you are very familiar with this, into a regional strategy, the development of the New York City Hudson Valley Food Shed Conservation Plan, which brought all of the land conservation organizations in the region together with a lot of the farmland protection boards and New York State with $20 million initially to the table to support the effort. And that is all intended to make sure that the farms we all need to be in place to supply local food to people who want it and need it will continue to be there over time. When the pandemic began, and I apologize if this was all talked about as sort of context at the beginning of the meeting that I missed, but it became clear to us and many others that there was a food access emergency, and that the cracks in the regional food system that I think we all knew about for a long time before the pandemic were being exposed for all to see. And I think there was if there was a silver lining to it, it was that it brought many of the organizations in this meeting today and others together to begin to think more strategically about how we could work with policymakers and others to fix those cracks. We were also already working on local food access issues on the ground in several urban communities in the Hudson Valley, most notably Newburgh and Poughkeepsie, where in Newburgh we were working with the Ecological Citizens Project and local community members and others to launch a small urban farm, and are actively working currently in Poughkeepsie with Duchess Outreach and Poughkeepsie Farm Project and others to create a new urban farm there. But again, as the pandemic unfolded, we saw many people in need. We saw the broken supply chains, and we also saw farmers struggling. So what we decided to do as an organization was sort of twofold. One was we immediately made contributions supported by staff, our organizational budget, and board members to food access groups in the 3 cities where we were working to show support for the organizations, local government, and mostly the people who needed the food there. And at the same time, though, we wanted to think of ways that we could approach this more in a more systemic, structural way to reach more people in the moment. And we learned about HVADC's Feed Hudson Valley project, and thought that it was exactly perhaps the way that we could efficiently strengthen access to people in need on a very local setting, while also supporting farmers who, in the throes of the uncertainty of the pandemic, were finding themselves unable, especially in the dairy community, to already under tremendous stress, to be able to meet their costs and get their products to people who need it. And so what we were able to do was to direct financial resources through the Community Foundation as part of the HVADC Feed Hudson Valley initiative, which enabled dairy farmers to be paid their cost so that the milk that was being produced, and of course isn't going to stop being produced because of a pandemic, could be delivered to people in need. And the milk products, the dairy products would not go to waste, the food would be delivered, and the farmers would be able to continue to operate more and function because their basic costs were being covered. So, you know, we know it was a Band-Aid in the moment, but we're proud to have been able to do it at the time. And like I said at the beginning, I think that it is one piece of a broader policy initiative that we all can and should be part of, especially with the new administration in Washington, to try to fix elements of our very fragile regional food system. I think Marianne may want to add on a little bit more in terms of detail about how the FeedHV program works and the actual benefits that this particular initiative created.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. I think what we're hearing today is the importance of all the partnerships that have occurred as a result of COVID, and moving forward. You know, again, our hopes is that we can, you know, find ways to make these relationships continue. So FeedHV is a food rescue network where we have a community of donors, a community of food access agencies, and a community of volunteers that help us rescue food and deliver it to the people who need it. Through that program, and with the generous support of Scenic Hudson, we were able to secure dairy products from Hudson Valley Fresh, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but that's a cooperative of about 11 or 12 dairy farms in various counties here in the Hudson Valley who produce, you know, milk and other products for delivery to market. With the Scenic Hudson support, we were able to purchase over 6,400 gallons of milk that went into the food bank. Thank you, the food bank, for helping us deliver. You know, tractor trailer loads are not necessarily our business, but through the food bank, we were able to distribute that throughout the Hudson Valley. And so that was, you know, a fantastic opportunity, and very much appreciated by Hudson Valley Fresh. As Steve mentioned, dairy is under extreme pressure. The folks that are surviving are those who are doing some of this value-added work. So they're not only producing the milk, they're then taking that milk and making it into products that can give them some extra money to survive. At the beginning of the pandemic, I'm sure you all heard about, you know, there was milk dumping happening. There was some of that happening here in the Hudson Valley. It wasn't as bad as it was in some other places. But that support really was meaningful for Hudson Valley Fresh to be able to have that outlet early on. And they were really more than happy to be working with the food bank and making sure they got some good food out to the folks in the community. The other farm we worked with was Ronnie Brook Dairy, also doing value-added production. They were able to supply, and we were able to purchase yogurt, butter, and milk. That stayed more locally here. It went to Columbia County, Friends of Hudson Youth, who were getting comments back from their clientele that said, "Oh my God, this is the best milk we've ever had." So you could really sense the appreciation that people had for getting a fresh product, that they don't typically get through that system. So they were very happy. Ronnie Brook has told me they had, much to their surprise, their best year ever, which is great, given at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was in a bit of a panic, and that included, Ronnie Brook. So we feel this is a really valuable collaboration. FeedHV was able to help identify the agencies and work with them to get the product. Some of our challenges including, delivery days. Could we make the delivery days work based on, what the dairies were able to do? Did folks have the capacity to store it, or did it need to be delivered on the day of distribution, as Mary had mentioned? So there were some logistics to work out, but certainly not insurmountable. And with willing partners, it was totally doable. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. Sarah can talk about, Duchess Outreach was a recipient of some of these products. I think Sarah can probably speak to, the value for her organization. And again, I just want to thank Steve and Scenic Hudson for being so thoughtful during all this and for thinking of us.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Marianne. And first, thanks to Steve Rosenberg, Scenic Hudson, Hudson Valley Agribusiness Development Corporation, FeedHV, the partners who made this possible, and Ronnie Brook. Because thanks to Ronnie Brook and this partnership, we were able to provide real butter to our food pantry clients who were previously receiving margarine, which in my mind is massive, a huge change that I would like to see continue, as I'm sure many folks that receive food from our food access org would also like to see continue. In addition to yogurt, to milk, it was a partnership that at first we thought might be challenging because of our limited storage capacity. So as Marianne has stated, that's something that needs to be investigated for all of these programs to become successful for both farmers and food access organizations. And beyond just the value that this partnership brought to our organization and our clients, just demonstrating that the small act that an organization that works in environmental protection, conservation, land conservation, food shed conservation, and the like has brought to this is absolutely incredible. And I know Scenic Hudson is working with partners in initiating urban farming projects, which I think is very key to this equation as well. And so just continuing the discussion and the thought work that comes along with it is the actual value. And so with that, I would like to offer the space for questions for either Steve, for Marianne on the dairy donation program, and also to open the floor for questions that might have been missed to Linda and Mary and Megan for Food Sovereignty Fund and the Nourish New York program as well.
Sarah, this is Virginia from Newburgh Urban Farm and Food. And
Sure.
so I don't have a question, but I do want to mention that, we've been doing food access work in the city of Newburgh since 2016. And it was through the generous support of the community foundations of the Hudson Valley that actually funded our CoolBot back in 2016, which made it possible for us to aggregate product from the community gardens, from the Downing Park Farm, and distribute it out to the feeding programs in Newburgh. So it made it really possible in 2020 when things exploded with COVID, because the majority of people in Newburgh are dependent on our food pantries. It made it really easy for us to turn around, use our relationships in our CoolBot to aggregate more product and to grow everything at the farm for the distribution. So we've been highly successful. We're going to do it again. This year, we have the HUD CARES Act money supporting us to make that happen. And we're going to expand the farm, which is 2 acres, to put up a 72-foot hoop house to increase growth there. What we find that's really important in working with the local pantries in the city of Newburgh is, number one, understanding their capacity and their schedule, but building our relationship with them so that on a snowy Saturday, when we have 500 pounds of food to distribute, we can move it out immediately. We can call the pantries, ask them, can they take it? Will they distribute it to their churches? And it gets done without a doubt. Everybody gets that food. So we've been very successful in reducing food waste because we can aggregate it, but we can move it quickly into the pantries. And also what we're hearing from the pantries, which is really, I think, important to our entire discussion, is that people, when they know that the fresh produce is coming through our program from the Downing Park Farm and the community gardens, they line up extra early to receive that fresh produce. So we are filling a great need in the city, and we hope to continue to fill that need well into the future. And I really want to thank the Community Foundation of the Hudson Valley for being so supportive of our efforts over these last 4 years. It really has made a difference.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I can't help but second that for the Community Foundations of the Hudson Valley. Eliza, one of our co-facilitators of the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition. So again, I want to see if there are any remaining questions for Steve on the dairy donation program or any of our other roundtable panelists. And then Eliza did pop in a very important notification about the Farm Fresh Food Grant Program. Applications are currently open for that. I think that they're accepting them until March 15th, or at least I hope so. Yes, I see a nod from Eliza. Okay.
Sarah, there was a question from Mark Doyle about the Nourish program. How are prices established, and is there any way within that program to contract forward with farmers?
Well, Linda, you can, I don't think there's, so I will tell you what I did is I paid grade A prices for grade A product. So we knew that this was going to be, it's always kind of an issue when you're contracting with a farmer to buy for soup kitchens and food pantries and, you know, the hunger system, because farmers might think, oh, you know, it's, I'm going to charge less and they can have B grade stuff or whatever. I didn't want that. Grade A prices, because farmers needed to continue to make money. Hopefully the grade A wholesale price was for that. Nobody's getting rich off this either. Grade A prices for grade A product, and transportation, depending on what was going on, either added into the price or added later. That was all part of it. So it was negotiated based on what was reasonable. Now, again, I have personal relationships with all of the farmers that I worked with over the years. So and I know where to look up the wholesale prices. You know, I have a little bit of an advantage over most maybe doing this because of my commercial agriculture background. So yes, there was nobody got paid before the stuff was delivered. That never happened. However, I did place orders for every week at this pantry, you're going to drop off 80, 100, 400 half gallons of milk, because they had a budget to work within. So there was some arrangement of, you can earn this much money. It's all yours if you follow this along, but until it's delivered, I'm not paying an invoice. So it was kind of a mixture of, yes, there's a promise, but it needs to be delivered before I pay you. Does that answer the question on how I did it?
I think so. Linda, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, you know, what we pay the farmers through Nourish was not supposed to be a race to the bottom, which is what USDA food box program turned into. I mean, the program wants to help farmers stay afloat. So we weren't interested in getting the lowest possible price. However, food banks and subawardees are making the ultimate choice, and they are going to, you know, they are going to scrutinize what the costs are, but that's the way. And we didn't forward contract with anybody. So.
Great. I have another question in the chat from Brandon Walker. Are there any organizations on this call that provide nonprofits in New York City with food for food insecure communities or communities in need? So any providers to New York City nonprofits? I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, we don't, so Glynwood doesn't provide directly to New York City nonprofits, but if you're looking for food that's going into the city, at least one of the farms that we work with on the CSA is a SNAP project. Their SNAP boxes, their CSA boxes are distributed in Manhattan. And then there are farms, there are potentially farms through the Food Sovereignty Fund that will work with city-based nonprofits. So a little bit, that connection obviously is super critical.
Great. And so you two connect.
I think Steve wanted to say something. Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say several years ago, we prepared a report called Local Food Access, which specifically looked at a range of Hudson Valley farms and organizations that were directing food into the city. And Brandon, if you reach out to me, I'll get a copy of that to you.
Excellent.
Well, you know, there is an effort underway in New York City to buy local and support local. I mean, the city just came out with their new 10-year food plan, which I think that I know supports local agriculture because they're looking at the circular economy. In terms of emergency food providers and connecting with farms, it would be City Harvest, the New York Food Bank, Westco, the West Side Campaign Against Hunger has put together an alliance of food pantries that have really gone out of their way to develop contracts and contacts with local farmers. So we're seeing a lot of work in that area. Of course, the need is incredibly high in New York City.
Thank you so much. And then Mark Doyle, I see a thought from you. Did you want to add anything to that or pose that to the group? You're muted.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for bringing me on. Yeah, I think, you know, this is not really addressing existing programs so much as to say that I can see a real potential for farmers in the valley to be able to expand production marginally, but by specifying a contract for, you know, seconds essentially that would be utilized for kitchens or for processing that would go to feeding pantries and also processors that might send that on secondarily to feeding organizations. So I'm not sure that we have exactly the system that can address that, but by saying it, perhaps we can be thinking around to creating that in the future.
We're working on it. So through SNAP Ed program and Cornell Cooperative Extension, we're actually going to start I know Shana stepped off, Stiles is still on if somebody wants to correct me. We're going to start on an evaluation of processing facilities. So whether it's schools or churches or what's going on, what's available out there. So and we're going to work on some processes and recipes to try and develop everything from whole meals that could be given out frozen that people take, or that the soup kitchens, because we learned during COVID that the handing out of whole meals changed entirely. So we need to still have prepared meals for people because they might not have the kitchens with which to cook the other things we've mostly been talking about today. So everything from individualized portions to meals that utilize what's available when it's available, but that gets into more. So the infrastructure of not only the processing facilities themselves, but also where is this stuff going to be stored once it's frozen? How do we get it distributed? So we're actually starting on about an 18-month to 2-year project to try and develop that. So that's coming. That's like the next step. It's going to be small, but we're working on it. Because I firmly believe there's a lot of infrastructure out there we're not tapping into effectively, whether it's schools that are underutilizing their refrigeration or freezer capacity, or even their kitchen capacity. Most of the time that's an insurance issue, but trying to figure out how to get in those places, utilize that stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's spots in the Hudson Valley where there's commercial freezer locations that are underutilized. So let's look into that. I know several of you, we talked about applying to do this, but now we'll get a little through the SNAP Ed program, some of that happening.
Great, that's excellent news, Mary. And I do see a question in the chat box from Ryston, and they're asking, does anyone have any information on more recent Hudson Valley food system research needs assessments in local communities or the Hudson Valley at large? They've seen a lot of surveying around, and what I can add to that is that there isn't a recent comprehensive needs and assessment for the Hudson Valley Food Shed to identify what exists, where opportunities lie. However, I know that there's work being done specifically on the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition to coordinate the effort, as well as other organizations that are on this call. I know other communities have specific, more tailored assessments. For instance, in Poughkeepsie, there was a food insecurity Poughkeepsie assessment done years ago, more than 10 years ago now, that was being updated, but then the coronavirus kind of tackled that initiative down. And I know Putnam Valley, or Putnam County, is working in their own coalition to try and initiate this kind of assessment. But as far as a Hudson Valley wide updated survey, no. But if you do want to get involved in a food system mapping project that is currently underway through the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition, that will help us identify what exists in the Hudson Valley, from farms to processors to what Mary's talking about, they're about to undertake, as well as food access organizations and the like. I see a lot of questions. Does anyone else?
May I add something to
Sure,
Mary?
yes, please, Marianne.
So through FeedHV, and again, with the support of the community foundations of the Hudson Valley and a grant that they were able to secure for us, we were able to do a little bit of that processing. I see Martha Elder is on, so thank you, Martha. We did work with Martha Elder at Second Chance Foods, and I believe some of the donated food you received came from Fishkill Farms. Erica, can you give me a nod on that? Yep, great. So I think you're right, Mary. I think there is some infrastructure out there. We tackled a very small piece of it. We worked with Community Action of Ulster County to do some meal prepping with some foods. We had Second Chance Foods and the Sullivan County Federation for the Homeless. So there are ways to do this. It was a learning curve. Again, it comes down to those logistics of coordinating that food donation. And to Mark's point, a lot of that happens last minute. So we get a call that there's some food that's going to go to waste, and if FeedHV can move it, please come get it. So, there's I wouldn't call it a scramble, but there is a little bit of, a time constraint to when that can happen. You then have to coordinate that with folks like Martha Elder to make sure that they can take it and then process it in a timely way and package it and then redistribute it. So it's a great concept. We are fully supportive, and Mary, we're here to help as well. So thank you for doing that. Sarah, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on you.
Oh no, please. It interrupts me at absolutely any point. Mary, there's a question. How should one be in contact with you if they're interested in either being involved or learning more about what you're up to?
So the SNAP Ed part, that's a little outside of me, but Styles, she's on here, srn28@cornell.edu. I can put that in the chat box too. She's actually going to be reassigned a little bit of her time off of our, as part of food security coordinator. She will be focusing on that, as well as one of our other nutrition educators here, to both do the assessment, but also start developing some products, recipes, processes for the agencies to use to try and figure this out. When you get, 900 pounds of kale, what are you going to do with it exactly?
Great. And Styles did just pop their email into the chat,
Oh, yay.
everyone. And you can find Styles information also too on, the Cornell Cooperative website or the Hudson Valley Food Systems Coalition website. Give it another shout, hvfoodsystem.org. There was another question that I saw, or not a question, a statement. Deborah mentions the work that's been done on this in Ulster County. I too want to shout that out because there has been really good infrastructure put in place through Ulster Corps, Family of Woodstock, People's Place, and the other organizations that are collaborating out across the river from Dutchess and a number of the other counties on the call. So that's worth mentioning because we don't want to recreate the wheel if we can. I saw a question from Brandon again about how restaurants can get involved in this initiative. I didn't know if anyone wants to jump in. I know we at Dutchess Outreach frequently receive meal donations that are paid for by members of the community to Essie's restaurant, that restaurant that Brandon Walker owns right here in the city of Poughkeepsie, to provide meals for our lunchbox program, which it's such an incredible donation and we appreciate that. But if there's anyone on the call that can suggest other ways for local restaurants to get involved in these initiatives, please feel free to chime in. Or this is something we need to think about. Okay, so that's a question to put on the bike rack.
So I'm gonna just make a plug for FeedHV though, and Erica Doyle is on. So Erica, maybe you could put your email in the chat box. FeedHV will do rescues from restaurants. I will say it has been a little bit challenging in terms of when the food could be picked up, when our volunteers are available. But it is something that we would like to do more of. And so if you are interested in that, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to Erica. And Erica, if you want to say something else, feel free.
No, I'm just going to put the info email for FeedHV. If you also want to visit our website, feedhv.org, or message me privately. We do mostly do donations from businesses. So if you'd like to get involved with that way, we would be very happy.
Excellent. Thank you.
I just want to call out for some help. So because of the work on Nourish, I've become acutely aware of rural pantries or suburban pantries' lack of fresh food. Because they're much more likely to rely on weekly or even monthly distributions, they're more likely to be shelf-stable stuff and have only maybe a residential refrigerator for a little bit of something. So I'm going to try and focus a little bit more on them in the future and try and teach them or help them maybe do some of this buying for the boxes we're talking about, or the portions, whether it's fresh dairy or whatever, after Nourish, what's this going to look like? So because they're not HIPNAP contractors, they may not be part of the food bank, so they might not be getting any fresh food. So the thing that I'm calling out for all of you, if any of you want to help me or feel like you have expertise in fundraising, because I think they're really missing out on some of the fundraising that could be done. Their churches, their temples, their firehouse, whatever's doing this little bitty, 30 families once a month kind of stuff. If you feel like you would be willing to be an instructor for a training that I might hold about how to effectively fundraise for food donations, please drop me an email, because I think I'm going to get those things started, because I want them to fundraise the money to buy from the farms to get these fresh packages. So if you want to help me out, drop me an email. Thanks. Bye.
Can I also just chime in about that a little bit, which is that, so I work for the Northeast Community Center in Millerton, and we've been doing a fresh food pantry program for years, funded by the Community Foundation. So I super appreciate that support. And we've been sort of acting as a hub for those rural pantries specifically, where we are the kind of landing place for that produce. We do fresh produce, milk, and eggs, and then distribute to all of those different, we have 3 or 4 monthly pantries that we work with locally. And I would say that that's been a really successful, that maybe that's a bridge, but I'm really curious about especially for the more rural areas, we're in Northeastern Dutchess, developing these kind of potential hubs, community hubs, because I think it's a lot for most of those church pantries that we work with are not able to really, because they're totally volunteer run, and their infrastructure is limited, and often they're setting up in an impermanent space for that food pantry. So I do think, we're looking at kind of how do we build, should we be focusing on kind of making ourselves a little bit more of a hub for that, to build capacity for those food pantries. So I'm definitely curious about what you're working on, but I think there's an interesting middle ground maybe that's possible.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Jordan. That's very important, because not all pantries can support that kind of, analysis. However, pantries like the Northeastern Community Center and others, Dutchess Outreach, could. So Mary, I thank you for that work. Are there any other questions? I see a number of organizations putting contact information into the chat, which I encourage, please do, to connect with each other. And again, interested in continuing the discussion, I encourage everyone to join the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition and one of the interest groups. Again, this discussion, the idea to bring all of you together today, came from Mary Ann's interest group, the Farm and Agriculture Interest Group. So the participants of the coalition decided that this was a worthy topic to kind of investigate and to see how we can help to forge connections with each other. With that being said, yes, I see a shout out to Long Table Harvest. Their work is incredibly important. They're gleaning up in Northern Dutchess and Columbia County. Thank you for that, Lauren. Let's see what else we have in the chat. And then I want to invite folks to engage in a breakout room discussion, either farmers or food access organizations that want to start having conversations about how they can work together right now. And so I'm going to open that breakout room for folks to join. If you're interested in just listening, then the conversation at this point is over, and you can leave and continue to think about this through your day. And again, join the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition. If you want to stick around and don't want to necessarily go into the breakout room, which is open now, and you can put yourself in there for farms and food access orgs, I encourage everyone who wants to stay and talk still to stay right here in this main room, so we can have discussions about how you can support work that is in establishing these relationships between farmers and food access organizations as possibly one of the greatest public health interventions of our time.
And before everyone goes, I want to thank all of our speakers today. We very much appreciate your time and your effort in this area. You're all great colleagues. It's always nice to see you. Hopefully someday we'll see you all in person. I would appreciate seeing people in person again. And thank you to Sarah and Eliza for helping us put this terrific Zoom call together, as well as Erica, who I have to say, without Erica, it would be very hard for me to do a lot of this. So thank you very much, Erica. I'm going to go over to the breakout room with the farmers and the agencies if anyone wants to join us over there, and see if we can, like Sarah said, maybe we can get something started this year. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And if you do have the most updated version of Zoom, you should be able to put yourself in a breakout room. But if you can't, let me know and I can put you there. It's weird virtual engagement. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Linda. Thanks, Megan. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Steve from Scenic Hudson. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Jordan, Virginia, Aaron, Brandon. Again, if you want to join the breakout session and you can't figure out how to do that, I can do that for you. So just let me know. Bye, Luke. Thank you.
Actually, you wouldn't mind kicking me into the
oh, sure.
breakout, would you? I don't know that I have.
Nope, I got you.
That. Thank you.
I would love that too, Sarah. Sorry.
Oh, sure. That's
Jordan.
okay. Gotcha.
I'll also go with Mary Ann.
Okay.
She's my date.
You got it. There you go. Let's see.
Sarah, are you doing food access?
I was going to go there, yeah, but I'm just going to make sure everyone is able. Did you want to go over there, Virginia?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Okay. All right. I think everyone who wants to be in food access is there. Elise, I'm going to kick the main room off to you. Great.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. Now, do I know how to move myself over there?
Do I need to move you over?
I have to be able to figure this out, right? Let me see. Hold on. Let me see if I can do this. I can do this. Oh yeah, there we go.
There you go. Excellent, excellent. And who are our agency folks that might be doing some buying? Jordan's doing both. I love it. Martha, Erin, Sarah. Great. Great. So Mark, you want to kick off sort of, what you're thinking from the farmer side, what might work for Fishkill Farms?
Yeah, thanks, Marianne. So I think pretty much as I outlined, I think many farms have the capacity to grow their production marginally, meaning, somewhat. So if we buy, what is it, by 10% or some amount like that, which would have the effect on the farm of actually probably improving efficiency, because we're probably going to use the same amount of, same number of farm workers, the same machinery. We're just going to use a little bit of land, hopefully a little bit more land. Hopefully we won't be ruining a good rotation in the process, but I definitely think there are opportunities there. And on the production end, if we're looking at being able to sort of forward contract, or at least it doesn't have to be forward, but we would want to do our seeding plan accordingly. So this is why forward contracting is important. On the production side, if we are in fact contracting for seconds, good seconds we're talking about, that would expand our output of first grade products, available for the retail market. So we kind of, on the farming side, selfishly, I guess, we would do well in this program by essentially guaranteeing ourselves a market for the seconds, and I think would accomplish a number of goals of reducing the amount of waste as well. So that's where I'm coming from, and I think the sort of the benefits of really pushing the overall food system organization into expanding the infrastructure and integrating the infrastructure can really pay off in the long term, because that infrastructure may not necessarily be just for the feeding programs, but may actually end up being good for our regular processing we could always do with co-packers in the area, in the valley.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have any other farmers who would like to chime in on what might work for them, what they find interesting about this?
I can jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren. I'm with Poughkeepsie Farm Project in Poughkeepsie. We're a farm-based nonprofit organization. So I just wanted to really highlight what Mark shared. Fishkill Farms is a for-profit organization, and a lot of farms in the Hudson Valley are. And I don't think a whole lot of them are on this call today. So I do think that there's definitely more limitations with some of our more production focused farm neighbors in the Hudson Valley. So just acknowledging that some of those voices are absent from this call. At Poughkeepsie Farm Project, we do have food justice and food access as one of our main values and goals. And we are primarily a CSA farm. So we have to commit to a certain number of shares. And we definitely plan for, we have to plan for some buffer and some overage to ensure that we can meet those numbers. So we generally plan around 20 to 30% extra in the field for what we will actually need for our CSA program. Some of that does, a lot of that does end up getting donated or going to other areas, but I just wanted to second what Mark said, that you know, some of the produce that we have to donate is good for redistribution, is more of an A grade quality. But we also definitely have a good amount of produce that is more processing, more suited for processing. So yeah, really looking for more ways to see those relationships either go direct from farm to community food partners, which are some relationships that PFP has, but also looking for more sort of regional distribution, or sorry, processing and holding facilities for that food. So that's something that I'd love to see in Poughkeepsie, and also just, you know, more broadly. I'm excited to see that taking shape.
Thank you. Stacy, did you want to add to that?
No,
Nope, you're
I
good.
think
Oh.
everyone.
I thought I saw a finger.
The tiny little pinky.
Yeah. So from the agency perspective, you got to talk about some of your challenges of trying to work directly with farms? Give them a sense of what you guys are up against?
I mean, I don't mind starting, you know, we work with the Poughkeepsie Farm Project as well as Fistral Farms and other farms in the area. And the biggest constraint for us is storage, refrigerated storage capacity, freezer storage capacity. And then the second biggest constraint, which I might put on the same exact level, is our limited capacity, people power, and infrastructure, you know, equipment to process. If we were able to process food that we received, that food would go so much further. It would last longer. Folks who receive the food would be able to prepare it in better ways. And I so envy the work that Martha does with Second Chance Foods, because it's so efficient and it's so important. And I would hope that every food access organization could have that kind of capacity. I understand Martha's doing it by herself and with volunteers, but could figure out a capacity that would work for them to store, to process, pack, and then do it in that way. And, you know, what Lauren's mentioning too is very important. You know, it could be a co-opted facility where partners are sharing the space, they're sharing the cost, they're sharing the infrastructure. And so, you know, in my mind, they're sharing the benefits, and the value would then go to our community and speak to the needs of our community in a better way. But yeah, largest constraints are storing and the inability to process, in my perspective. In Jordan, Virginia, I don't know if you want to add.
I think one of the things that we've learned in working with the pantries, one of the constraints, the people that get the food may not have storage in their apartments or where they're living to keep it fresh. So there's some issue in what can be distributed if it can't be eaten immediately. You know, in trying to identify the families in Newburgh that don't have cooking facilities or storage facilities, what do you give them if they're coming into a pantry? We also saw a lot of Brussels sprouts coming from the food bank this summer, which is okay for some of us. But you know, you're a young family, and it's kind of hard when you're getting a little Brussels sprouts in your package to take home. So again, one of the goals that we're setting out going forward is to start talking to the people that are going to the pantries for food, and getting a better sense of what it is that they would like, what they need. We know that, you know, lettuce and tomatoes, cucumbers, things that can be eaten quickly, used in different ways, are great. But we really want to get a better handle on what it is that we should be producing for the pantries to better meet the needs of the people they are serving.
Thank you, Virginia. Jordan, did you want to say anything?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I can reiterate all of these points from both the farmer, my partner and I run a dairy farm, a small dairy farm, the Chase Home Farm in Pine Plains. And then I also do the food programming for the NECC. And so there's I can see a lot of these common challenges that you all are bringing up on both sides. I will say I am facilitating a call on March 22nd for the Hudson Valley Young Farmers Coalition. That's like specifically the farmer focused side of this conversation. So it's at 7 p.m., but we're gonna do a food access and equity conversation from the side of the farmers. And if anyone wants to join that call, absolutely reach out. I'm Jordan at NECC Millerton.org. I can put that in the chat. But yeah, I think that cold storage is a huge issue. It's obviously been identified. Processing is a huge issue. I think even within Dutchess County, we can see it was spoken to a little bit on this call, but there's really different needs between the more urban spaces and the more rural spaces. And so being able to kind of adapt even by micro region, I think is important. And then one of the things that I think cold storage and processing, and then also Sarah and I have been having this conversation a little bit, but also distribution and maybe even delivery and getting food out to clients. And so that has been, we've been having a little bit of a conversation with the FeedHV app and sort of what can we do organizationally behind the scenes to also make sure that, especially in the more rural parts of the counties, that people are able to access the food. So yeah, I think those are huge. And I would say I managed Hardy Roots Farm for a number of years. The crew there and we worked with the local Produce Link program, which was a coordination with Just Food in the city. And that worked really well. That was an outline or a structure that worked really well with bigger CSA farms. Like you were saying, you have to plan for a certain amount of excess. And I think the model that they worked on for years, which was a kind of a hybrid contract. It was a contract that had a loose, like you owe one leaf and one fruit and one root instead of specific produce, was really effective for the farm in that way. So I would love to kind of use some of the lessons that we've learned from programs that may not be running anymore to move forward.
Great, thank you, Jordan. I'm sure everyone would appreciate if you could share your contact info about that call you're having with the young farmers. Tamor, did you have something to add?
Yes. So I'm neither a farmer nor on the other side, but I'm a founder of a tech company that we are all about helping farms. So we provide free inventory software for farms to be able to list their inventory, and where pantries can order through the farms. Farms can donate to pantries. We just partnered up with Rethink Food. They're our first nonprofit we partnered up with. And then we take the data and we analyze it. So we are able to tell you, for example, how many pounds of cauliflower is in the Hudson Valley. You can break it down per zip code and what the average price on the call. Some people didn't know where to price their produce. We can offer that. We do it on the grade A level, the grade B level, anything really organic, non-organic. We compare small farms to medium farms to large farms, because obviously small farms are going to have cheaper prices, more expensive prices than large farms. I'll put my contacts. We're launching next month, and it's 100% free for the farms to use our software, and for the pantries and for restaurants. A lot of people are going to ask, how do we make money if it's for free? We make money by later on selling data analytics if people need it to help you run better, but it's always going to be free to use our software.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Linda, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something Virginia said about the lack of facilities for cooking and storage for low-income families. I mean, this is something we've seen in New York, that, you can give, bulk food to people, but they can't cook it if they don't have a hot plate or a refrigerator. So I think that really does illustrate the need for more shelf-stable product. And getting back to what Sarah said, we need more cooperative kitchens and shared kitchen space and refrigeration. I have heard that there is discussion at USDA and in the state about some sort of program that would provide, say, money for pantries or groups to buy vans or rent vans and to by refrigeration. And so hopefully that's something we'll see. But I think that local groups should push for, working with the state agencies like Department of the Aging. And Marianne, I thought maybe you want to share the program we talked about with Susan Zimmett, working with those agencies to see if it had any relevance to this conversation.
Yes, thank you, Linda. That was actually what Mary was referring to with her discussion about the SNAP Ed money and trying to identify what infrastructure is out there, how it could be utilized. We will see that. I think we may see a little bit of that inventory happening in 2021. I think maybe some sort of pilot effort in 2022. But that is really, Mary and Stiles, they're kind of leading the charge on that. But it was a conversation, and thank you, Linda, because I think you were a big part of that, about how, and Sarah Salem, how do we address this sort of infrastructure shortfall that could make a big difference? I know, and maybe Martha would like to speak to it a little bit, again, from community foundations and a grant that FeedHV was able to receive. We were able to help a couple agencies out with some refrigeration and freezer equipment this year. I think we did, 3 different things. A refrigerator, right, Martha? Did you get a refrigerator? Yep. You're on mute.
I got a freezer.
A freezer, okay. So we did a freezer, we did a cool bot, and maybe Sullivan County got a refrigerator. But that was a huge difference for those 3, agencies to be able to have the ability to do some extra storage. And this wasn't a huge investment in dollars. So it's pretty critical that we keep this conversation going. And Martha, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but maybe you could kind of just talk a little bit about that impact for folks and the good work you do.
Thank you, Marianne. So Second Chance Foods is already doing this processing that everybody is talking about. And I would say, though, that we're pretty much at maximum capacity right now, just because of our funding level and the cold storage. We're cooking twice a week right now, but we have 100% access to the commercial kitchen that we rent. We could be cooking 7 days a week if we had more funding, more staffing, more cold storage to put the food that we're cooking into. But I think we have a really proven model that's working. The food that we produce is of really excellent quality, which is what we should be producing and giving to people. And I think it's such an important component of food rescue and food access, is giving people a finished product, where if they do only have a hot plate, they can still have a complete, nutritious, delicious meal. And it's incredibly cost effective what we do. The value of the food that we rescued last year is, close to $500,000. And doesn't take that much more funding to be able to rescue more and process more.
Can I just follow up too? One of the things that we have in the city of Newburgh, we do not have any processing facilities, which we desperately need. But we do have the highest asthma rate for the state, and we have incredible amount of lead poisoning in the blood with our kids, and we have obesity, the highest again, and even above the national average. So if you look at the food that is given to families, that is canned food that might have sulfites in it, you're triggering asthma attacks. And even for adults, the pediatric and adult asthma attacks in Newburgh are extremely high. So what we see from the literature is that fresh leafy greens, carrots, tomatoes, these are the things that will improve health and are desperately needed by these families to keep especially their kids healthy, and then to get them moving out into a healthy world. So processing, I think, is one of the key ingredients that has to be incorporated into the feeding programs, and it has to be a 12-month piece of the puzzle, not just during the summer when there's a few things available, but throughout the year, so that healthy produce can be cooked up in a way and put in meals given to families if they don't have the capacity, or taught how to use it in their cooking, and is ethnically appropriate for that group of people that you're trying to serve. So that is a major project I think Newburgh really has to grapple with and get something underway so that we have all this produce. How do we prepare it now?
Thank you, Virginia. I think Megan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just am sort of reminiscing on Brandon Walker's participation in the call earlier, and this is just to like put this out into the world to see if there is some traction amongst this group for it. But the restaurants in our area, many of them are so underutilized right now, and the kind of support that we've seen through Nourish New York for farms, I feel like there really ought to be an answer to that, to paying restaurants to do some of this preparation work. So not just thinking about rescuing foods from restaurants, but how do we utilize the skill they have as food workers and the infrastructure existing right now, even when we're able to go back to having them open at full capacity. This industry is devastated for a decade or more at this point. So any like extra support into that piece of our regional food system, I think is important for this coalition to think about. And like the restaurant is still closed sometimes, right? You know, I worked in the restaurant industry a long time, and I've worked places where we rented out the kitchen for the hours that our own staff didn't need it. So I'm just putting that out into this brain space to think about like what opportunities might we have to better engage those restaurants. It's not in any way a solution for the infrastructure problems and the type of work that Martha is doing, but maybe an additive to it.
Can I add real quick that Megan, thank you for that. And I think recently there was something written about this in the New York Times. I know it was centered around New York City restaurants, working with local nonprofits and kind of recognizing how those relationships need to exist moving forward. So I would encourage everyone to Google it. And actually our data collector friend that has left already is working with one of the initiatives that is doing that, Rethink Food, in his organization, Bone Harvest, which is really interesting inventory management systems. Megan, thank you. Marianne.
Thank you, Sarah. We have a question from Ryston. I hope I said that okay. Has anyone encountered any challenges operating processing facilities / running food and nutrition programs during the pandemic? And follow-up was how did you adapt to these new constraints?
So I'll just say for Second Chance Foods that we never stopped with our processing when the pandemic hit. We really had to shift our volunteer base. You know, we had relied a lot on retired people, and we also had interns with intellectual disabilities. They all had to stop coming. And so luckily we have a really strong presence in our local community, and, you know, teachers and students and furloughed workers really came out really wanting to help. You know, of course, it's all the, you know, COVID protocols that we all know about already. You know, don't come if you're feeling unwell. Everybody has to wear a mask. We always, you know, keep our huge exhaust fans going, windows open. We all kind of freeze in there right now, but at least we got some airflow going. And we just limited the number of volunteers. We used to be pretty much, you know, come if you want and we'll figure out what you're going to do. And now we have people sign up so that we can at least have some little bit of space between folks.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I would say that the move towards delivery was really a response to the pandemic. You know, we were doing that on a micro level for people who were having trouble with transportation or were elderly, and that has really expanded with the pandemic. But what it's highlighted to me is that that's actually a big need. That, you know, that was one of the underlying needs that we weren't actually addressing earlier, because a lot of the people who requested delivery because of pandemic related things actually have other constraints that make delivery really helpful. So in a rural area, that is, you know, that's just been one of the pivots. But again, it's kind of been possible right now because people have a little bit more flexibility. We've been doing volunteer-based delivery, and our volunteers, those retirees that we're helping in other places, are now driving food for us. But I don't know that that is a totally sustainable answer to staffing that process moving forward. So I am curious about ways to kind of develop efficiencies and codify delivery-based delivery-based food.
Great, thank you. I just want to be cognizant of everyone's time. We are, oh, Linda, you want to say something and then I'll.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to follow up quickly with Megan's comment about the restaurant industry and getting, and Sarah touched on it too. New York City used $600 million in FEMA money funding through New York Homeland Security to contract with restaurants to develop these meals to get to people that were homebound. It was a very successful program. And, you know, we didn't do it in any other part of the state, which is kind of unfortunate. But I think that's, you know, a model that maybe you might all look at for your area, because, I mean, they paid drivers to deliver the food. They paid restaurants for the work. Restaurant employees were employed. I mean, it's not an easy thing to set up. I mean, it was all based on bids. I mean, the restaurants had a bid on the food plan, but it was very successful, and they did get out many millions of meals. So just, you can go online and Google the New York City food program, and you can see a lot of the details about that if you're interested.
Linda, is that, I recently heard that because our local Department of Health are charged with ensuring that folks that are quarantining get food. Was that partially how that was funded, through New York State or New York City?
New York State did not fund one penny of it.
Okay, it was all
virtually came from FEMA paid 75%,
okay.
and the CARES Act paid the other 25%. And I mean, I think that, you know, everybody's looking into it, but I mean, it still is an opportunity. And I think that there are still a lot of people that are homebound. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that info.
All right, I just want to be cognizant of everyone's time. We are at 12:15. We said we were going to end at 12. So look at all you dedicated folks continuing. I very much appreciate it. Mark, you got anything to say before you go from our farmer perspective? You're going to grow all the food for all these great initiatives, Mark?
Well, on the spot. So no, this is wonderful again to hear of these great examples around, and so useful. You know, it's hard to keep tabs on all the advances that are being made. So Megan, thank you for bringing up those kitchens, and wonderful to hear about the way they've been utilized in New York City. So, you know, I think, Marianne, we had also HVADC involved ourselves in mapping of food systems using a GIS system. And I think that kind of data is certainly going to be helpful. And I really look forward to the progress we're going to make. This feels like a moment when we will be able to look back on and say that the system changed on the state.
Yes, yes, very much so. I agree. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining. I would say we will continue to try to help foster this conversation moving forward, and very much appreciate everyone's time today and dedication. And if anyone has any questions for us, feel free to contact us through the coalition. And if you're not, you know, already signed up to be a part of it, we're going to encourage you again to join one of our interest groups and keep the momentum moving forward. And one last thing on Linda Laviolette, her knowledge is just unbelievable, and we should have Linda on every phone call. So thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Reminder, this
Thank
will be
you.
posted on the Hudson Valley Food System Coalition website if you want to share it out or just watch it again to re-stimulate the ideas. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Linda, Mark, Megan, Jordan, Alicia, Eliza, Erica, Luke, Ryston, all the late comers. See y'all later. Bye.